with extra manuscript notes as to things that you might find helpful, things to read, and again, formal instructions in addition at the bottom. Manuscripts. Have only a quick look and put it away. Read it for next week. Anything you want to specifically ask next week. Next week, I would like to know who your director is. So think about it for a week. Come up with who your American director is. Anybody want to check at half time if that's going to be okay before you finalise next week? And it comes in 2.5 weeks after Easter, 12th of May. So we're talking seven weeks today. So you have plenty of time, 7 weeks today to actually work on this. So I say, next week you'll sign your name on the register and at the same time on the right hand side put in your chosen director. And I want to okay them before Easter, because obviously Easter's a good time to start running movies and going through. So we did a very elaborate, but still introductory way. So one of the dimensions of style on Ford last week. Your own chosen director. There'll be one more session on style directly after Easter on Wells, before you actually do this. So sign up please, register right hand side of the page. Okay, let's have a bit of a quieter afternoon this afternoon. We're a long way in. I'm recovering from illness and extremely tired, so let's slow it down. I want to get down a lot of notes. First session, I want to get a lot of dictated notes down. Additional ways of getting into a director, and especially Ford.
You're not on Blackboard?
Sorry? No, I don't use Blackboard. It's all handouts and stuff. Have you got your readers, the Ford readers? Yeah. 2 volumes. Yeah, it's all in there. So what I want to do this afternoon is, let's slow it down. One word of warning, though I think it's okay. Next week we introduce Wells before Easter. Get the second director up. They've got a lot of school kids coming in, and they want to try and tie us up on Wednesday and Thursday. However, I shall try and avoid it to the best of my abilities. So, one chance in 20 this doesn't run. Should run. Come along just to see if it's going to run, and I'll get out of it as best I can. Okay, so we need to get on with this. Introduction to Wells next week. So, complicated case for Wells. Before Easter, 2 directors go off, start thinking about this, and so on. So what I want to do is, today, a bit slower, let me get a set of dictated notes, talk through a number of other dimensions, and then, after the break, second half, I want to look at the 2 late masterpieces in a lot of detail. The Searchers, 1956, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. The basic view is this. All of Ford's work, his lifetime in cinema, all his themes, the entire interpretation of America and its values, everything comes together in 2 films. None of the other later films are individual subject matters, but in Searchers and Liberty Valance, everything comes together. They weren't meant as, but they serve as the final statement. In the end, after a lifetime in cinema and all his themes, where does Ford stand? So Searchers, Liberty Valance. They are also two of the most complex of Ford's films. So it's the complexity of Ford in those two. So I'm going to give quite long introductions, talk about the theme, structure, narrative structure of the two films. Then very long extract from Searchers, maybe 20 minutes or more, and then a long extract of Liberty Valance to compare. They're very different. They are totally different, but they fit together. In the end, Ford stands here, Searchers and Liberty Valance. Searchers is the great tragic vision. The darkest themes in Ford surface in the Searchers. Tragic structure and the American narrative. Liberty Valance brings the entire vision together. So it's the way the two films relate, and we'll look at those two. So let's just do some notes. We've done a lot on Ford. Let's bring certain other things together. I want to bring certain notes together on the theme of community, certain notes together on community and its main themes, certain notes together on value systems in Ford and the handouts, and then three other things, lots of things you can do. Let's take gender. Ford and gender. You know, there are dozens of ways into any director. Let's take gender. Constructions of male and female identity in Ford. It looks male-based, is it? Role of women in Ford. Male values, what we'll find is there's an entire set of values that is constructed around male values. There's an entire set of alternative values constructed around female values. It's how they relate that is key to Ford, male and female in Ford. Let's talk about Ford and the star system, and Ford and genre construction. But simply, let's just get a few more things going. The readers now give you everything you need. Volume 1, 2 big overviews, start there. But Volume 2, all kinds of material you can dip in. But Volume 1 first. So start a new set of notes. And let's start with just a couple of instructions. Things that you would do to take you into the heart of Ford. Things that you would do based on classwork. How would you use classwork to get into Ford to a number of key axes? So just put a heading, additional approaches to Ford. And again, remember, this is a model for dealing with any American director, any director. The detail on Ford serves as a model to how you think about any director's work. So, additional approaches, let me just indicate, leave a couple of lines, bullet points. Take the handout on themes and issues. These are a set of instructions. Let's write this down. Take the handout on themes and issues in Ford. So it's this one. Take the handout, themes and issues in Ford. Dash. For every Ford film you watch and consider, examine how many of those major themes appear, and exactly how they are examined. And exactly how they are examined. Examined. Come and sit down the front. If you want to ask questions, it could be easy just to chat at the front. Okay, all right.
Or you can go back a bit.
Right. Can you actually sit next to somebody? Sit right next to somebody so you can see. We need to get through this. There's a lot to get through. Sit right next to him. Sit right next to him so you can see the look. Okay, and exactly how. So, again, open brackets. The examination will be different in every film. The examination will be different in every film. Close brackets, pause there. Just because you've identified 20 themes off the list in any one film, that's where you begin. Every film will look at those themes differently. Different aspects, different dimensions, different values, different emphases. But the thematics of every film, take the list, see what's there, then exactly how are those themes examined. Every film will be different. Every film will be different. It's a constant, progressive examination going on. Okay, leave a couple of lines. For every film, particularly consider the theme of community. For every film, particularly consider the theme of community. Open brackets, look at all community issues on the theme list. Close brackets, dash, exactly how is the theme of community and threats to community examined. Exactly how is the theme of community and threats to community examined. Pause there. Again, obviously what you have to do is understand what is the community in that film. It's not obvious. In what way is community constructed in that film? Stagecoach. One way. Young Mr. Lincoln. Another way. Grapes of Wrath. Family and community. Expendable. The military unit. Darling Clementine. The frontier town. The cavalry units of the cavalry trilogy, the wagon train in Wagon Master, and so on. They'll always be presented differently. What's being examined? That community will run throughout the film. So again, take the community themes. For every film, what is the community structure? What is the community examination? Leave a couple of lines. Next bullet point. Crucially examine each Ford film in relation to the American value system. open brackets, apply carefully the entire list of values and dangers the right-hand column handout. So it's that. So it's the column that begins early founding values. It's the ideology column in the handouts. The ideology column in the handouts. So again, this is the way in. You don't just say, oh, there's a value. Is it in that film? Yes. But rather, there is a crucial American value in the American value system. How does Ford approach it? What subtle analysis of those values is he looking at? Strengths and weaknesses. But that will get you going in terms to a complex value system that Ford will be engaging in every film. Many American directors engage this value system. But Ford will engage this value system in film after film in very subtle ways. How? So take the ideology column and really start to examine it film by film. What subtle view of American values, their strengths and weaknesses, is in that Ford film? It'll never be propaganda. It'll never be simple. It'll never be programmatic. It will be embedded in the complexity of lives, actions, decisions, casual conversation, statements, the very embodied world as an image of America. The films will be saturated by American values, but how? You just don't get a theme liberty, oh, that, and that. How does Wagon Master engage the theme of freedom and liberty? And so on. Okay? So in other words, the third way in, take the full ideological structure. Any more to come? Take the full ideological structure, and that's where you begin to look at this value examination in Ford. It'll be very subtle, and it'll be very intuitive. Won't necessarily be obvious, but it'll be fundamentally examined. But how? How? Got to look at the films. Got to look at the films. So in other words, you don't just reel this stuff off. These are frameworks for thought, frameworks for examination. If that primes you to look at Ford's films in a certain way, then look at the films for what they are. What really are the moral issues of each film? The moral issues of Grapes of Wrath look straightforward, much more complex than they look. Fort Apache just looks like a cowboy and Indians western. Incredibly complex, fundamental examination of Eastern versus Western values. Theoretical versus practical, book knowledge versus experience, East Coast military training versus actual frontier experience, knowledge of the plains tribes, arrogance versus humility, thinking you know what's going to work, and having to painfully learn gradually from the Indian Wars. They're endless. Fort Apache, every film. Okay, so it's ways in, gender next. Ways in, start to look at the texture of the film. They are incredibly subtle. They can look obvious, They are incredibly subtle. See what is there. See what is there. So it's opening up to the experience of each film under these frameworks, but don't rigidly apply them. These frameworks get you to ask certain questions, then look at what is in the film. And hence, what I said in week 1 is the sheer depth of Ford's examination of America that you're going to go for. So I'm trying to move you beyond the surface. What's obvious is, in the end, where we reach is now total immersion in a director's film. Total openness to what that director may be doing. And you have no knowledge of fully what the director may be doing. You've got to be open to the films totally. But these are structures that will lead you into how complex Ford is when he looks so obvious. Okay. Let's take an example. Let's take Ford and gender analysis. It looks like a male-dominated world, male values, male action. What are the complex interplays between male and female value systems? If you did straight gender analysis, construction of masculinity, construction of femininity, values related to both. Okay, let's try. Again, as with themes, the more you look at Ford, certain patterns emerge, certain continuities. He constructs maleness, he constructs femaleness in very distinctive ways. And then that takes us into stars. How does he actually use particular stars to embody the gender conception? So let's take some notes on, for example, gender, and see where that might lead you. So I'm just opening up stuff, hinting at how many levels you can come in on any director. No better way to do it than on Ford. He is so central. If you're going to take a case model of the scale on which you take on a director, Ford is a great model, and that's why. Let's do some gender stuff. Again, let's do it as notes. Never forget that he's Irish, where gender is concerned. What kind of underlying patterns of values to do with gender do we find in Ford? And that will start to become clear on searches and liberty balance. Let's try this. Let's kick off with gender within the family and the family unit. So just put heading gender, approaches to gender in Ford. Let's get some points. If community theme is central, if the community theme is central, if the community theme is central, the examination of the family, the drama of family units. Tensions and issues within families will always be important. Dash just one way into this. just one way into this would be issues of gender. Leave a line. Look carefully at the issues of male and female identity in Ford. Look carefully at the issues of male and female identity in Ford. And how distinctive sets of values gradually build up in relation to each. What then naturally arises, of course, is his narrative direction in a number of films. Leave a line. Consider the fact that the structure of many narratives in Ford include the elements of anarchic male individualism, include the element of anarchic male individualism and the need for accepting responsibility. A need for accepting responsibility to a larger community structure. Open brackets, whether it is family, community, military unit, or whatever. From that, let's get to the male value system in Ford, given that has to somehow be accomplished. Remember, back on the original ideological element. Catholic Irish, not Protestant individualism, not Hawks. That identity is communal. That identity will belong to community. That what you want, male values, what you want is anarchic male freedom. To do what you want, violence, to get drunk, to be lawless, anarchic lawlessness, anarchic male lawlessness. There is this incredible propensity in Ford's films for anarchic male lawlessness. It can go from the entire spectrum. You know, the Irish themes, getting drunk, right through to the extremes we'll look at today. Male want, go your own way. And there is this kind of incredible understanding of that, which creates kind of colourful, unique, robust character. Unique character in terms of that anarchic freedom. But the deeper moral theme always is belonging. That in the end, it has got to be overcome. Duty, responsibility, a family, community, unit, and hence the value, mature male values, will somehow relate to overcoming the anarchic male lawlessness. Now that's everywhere in Ford. Everywhere. Look how that works. Out of that comes very distinctive male set of values. So, looking at that thing, just leave a line. Try this as a list. If you look at the values that start to accrue to male identity in Ford, then what's really interesting, of course, is how they relate to female values and the crucial role of women in Ford's reading of America, community, family, tradition. Male values. Try some of these. Again, this is just to get you going, but in terms of the dozens and dozens, hundreds of male characters in Ford, look how these values start to get prioritised. Try these male values in Ford. Male values in Ford. Strength, independence, courage, strong individual identity. In other words, being your own man. Standing out, being your own man. The crucial value of honour. Look at the very complex senses of honour and integrity. Honour and integrity in Ford. Honour and integrity. It will also include stoic endurance. You've got to be able to take it in Ford. Stoic endurance of suffering. Stoic. S-T-O-I-C. S-T-O-I-C. As in Stoic philosophy, the Stoics movement. Endurance of suffering. That a kind of dignity and integrity is also in this value of endurance. Also notice he prioritises the following. Being instinctive, male. Being instinctive, being intuitive, open brackets, over against, being unduly intellectual, against, it's a hard way to put it, but excessive thinking. It's this whole intuitive, spontaneous male identity in Ford, over against being over intellectual, excessive use of thinking, and also a distrust of verbal rhetoric. A distrust of verbal rhetoric. In other words, look at the orators in Ford. The orator at the beginning of Young Mr. Lincoln, the orators at the end of man who shot Liberty Valance?
Peter L Titterington.
Probably not. Which bit? Distrust orators. O-R-A-T. O-R-A. E.g., the beginning of Young Mr. Lincoln, end of Liberty Valance, which are the absolute prime examples of orators. He has a certain model of male intelligence. And what he prioritizes is ordinary, natural, common sense. Ordinary, natural, common sense. Look how that is structured in Stagecoach and in Young Mr. Lincoln. Ordinary common sense. But the natural, the intuitive, the spontaneous, the authentic. Let's try it that way. Natural, intuitive, natural, intuitive, spontaneous, authentic. These are lines. When you start to look at the role of women in Ford, an entirely different set of values starts to build up. And what's crucial in Ford is the male-female complementary values. Ford is not an erotic director. If you want to look at eroticism in Ford, if you actually see Ford in terms of erotic subject matter, look at The Quiet Man. Quite sensuous, erotic undertone in The Quiet Man. But male and female roles are much more to do with identity, more social. We're going to wait till we get to Hitchcock before we have an entire cinema saturated by sexuality. Now, Ford's cinema is not. Wells' cinema is not. Individual male power is going to play very special roles in both Ford and Wells, with Hitchcock saturated in sexuality, but not Ford or Wells yet. But female values are approached in a very specific way in Ford. Try this. And again, watch Ford films, roles of women, how he constructs them, what values he prioritizes. Try the following. Again, these are just structures to get you going when you examine how gender works in Ford's films. So try the following female values. Ford emphasizes initially traditional women's roles He initially emphasizes traditional women's roles at the center of communities. Open brackets. In aspects of a constraining order. Continuity within community. Often its key values and responsibilities. Often a community's key values and responsibilities. And traditionally he tends to emphasize self-restraint within the female value system. Now all this looks very patriarchal, and in fact that is one of the most interesting gender ways into Ford. It's a kind of patriarchal vision, but lots of subtle things are going on. Because the thing we're getting to is this. In Ford cinema, which you've got to know where to look, opposing the anarchic free males are anarchic strong females. You've got to absolutely match male-female. So you've got to understand strong women in Ford to see how it works. But initially, traditional roles. Okay? Also, do it this way. This will get you a long way in Ford. Look at the following traditional roles. Again and again, how the woman works in the film begin with the social role. So you've got the following traditional roles. As mothers, daughters, sisters, sweethearts, wives. Take those 5 roles. But every single woman is completely individual. Sometimes in Stagecoach, there's a couple of sequences where he's really not interested, and he's just got a couple of Hollywood actresses and they just say the line. But in any serious Ford film, every woman is as different as every man. Social roles. Think of the... Everybody here Irish? Irish? Would this be fair? I'm not just going to say it without getting some Irish support for it. Would you say that this is a fair statement that within Irish tradition, if a stranger arrives, it's the woman who will welcome him to the house?
Yeah.
Okay. There is this absolute pivotal central role of a central strength and order within the woman's role. For example, welcoming the stranger, whatever it might be. And men will often stay in the background in things like this. So what you've got to allow for is the strength of roles for women in Irish tradition. Yeah. We're not talking English, Victorian, puritanical, repressive traditions. Irish traditions can maintain, extraordinarily open, strong, fiery aspects of female character. There isn't that sense of the English Anglo repressive dimension. Ford is Irish. So you start with all those traditional roles, and whichever role they're occupying, see how they're occupying it, with what sense of duty, responsibility, whatever. Always unique individuals. But then this is when it gets interesting. Look carefully at the key strong women in Ford. So over against the anarchic males, the key strong women. Look at all the key roles played by Maureen O'Hara. So look at Maureen O'Hara in the Cavalry trilogy. And A Quiet Man.
Look how character Kate Blanchett is something like Ford.
In The Missing.
Yes.
Obviously one thing when we get to the searches is that after The Unforgiven of Eastwood, the Western seemed to have reached another end of a cycle and it went quiet. It's opening up again into an entire new reconstructed cycle. Ron Howard's The Missing, Costner's Open Range. There were Tombstone films. Notice the new great constructed cycle is deliberately beginning from Ford. Open Range has many elements from Wagon Master. The Missing is a reworking of the searches. Tombstone and Wyatt Earp, Caston and the other, is based on Clementine. The new great new cycle is fundamentally rethinking, beginning with Ford's particular films, Wagon Master and so on. Missing Maybe elements of Maureen O'Hara. Let's get to the actual two late films. Maureen O'Hara in the Cavalry trilogy, Quiet Man. Vera Miles. We're looking at Vera Miles today. Vera Miles in The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. So, strong women's roles. Maureen O'Hara in those four films. Vera Miles in Searchers, Liberty Valance. Jane Darwell as the mother in Grapes of Wrath. And if you want some real tough, anarchic females, look at Joanne Drew in Wagon Master. Hard-drinking, tough actress with the travelling theatre group. Look at the courtship of Joanne Drew in Wagon Master. Ben Johnson's got his hands really full taking on Joanne Drew in Wagon Master. Look at the sexual courtship in Wagon Master. And finally, of course, where he really pulls out all the stops, Anne Bancroft in Seven Women, where she virtually is John Wayne. She's as tough as Wayne, and potentially as aggressive and as violent. But in terms of taking on the Mongol tribes, attacking the religious station, she's like John Wayne in The Searchers. A masculine role, but look at her female sexuality. Bancroft in Seven Women. So many strong women, and every strong woman is different. So again, that's another entire pole of Ford cinema. Look at his strong women. Because obviously what it looks like is a male patriarchal system. And in many ways it is. Ford was a patriarchal figure. The father of the community, the head of authority. And on every film, that theme in the film is somehow actually recreated by Ford's role on set. He was a patriarchal father figure in his giant crews that made the film. So as a patriarchal male authority in the films, that's all there. Look at the strong women. Look at the roles of strong women and see the other pole of Ford's universe. Okay, that's where you begin with gender. Let's say a little bit about stars. Let's see a little bit about genres. Let's take a pause, but literally what you tend to see are male protagonists, male roles, male actions, male groups. Flip over Ford cinema and look at it from the female point of view, and a reading of American experience as deep is there just by looking at the role of women in Ford. So remember the Irish tradition of female roles, not Victorian, puritanical, repressive, restrictive. Very different to that. It's very different to that. Okay. Let's take a pause there. A little bit about star system and Ford, a little about genre system and Ford. Pause, and we'll take on the last two masterpieces. Everything we've done on Ford. Just look at how complicated Ford could get in the last two masterpieces. Everything should come together when I run these long two extracts. They should work on you now in a way they never would have done if we hadn't gone through all of it. So let me show you how complex Ford could be. How great is it? The last great masterpiece. So that's after the break. Let's take a pause. Brief pause before stars and genre briefly. That's a very detailed case for Ford. Might be right, might be wrong. You might believe some of it, not others. That's an interpretation of Ford. That's an interpretation of Ford. There are others very different to that. That's one interpretation of Ford. That's a very strong, sympathetic, supportive reading of Ford for Ford's greatness. Others will try and limit Ford in a number of ways. I would make that much stronger case for Ford's greatness. But it's a case for his greatness. It's a case for his greatness. Paul, any points on what we've done on Ford so far? Ford himself as a director. Anything on Ford to bring up? Or the case made for Ford? Even more to the point. Anything to bring up about the case made for Ford? Got to make up your own minds on Ford. That's one version of Ford. That's the case for Ford. If you make up your own mind, is there in the film or not? That's your reading. Anything to bring up? Anything to think about, talk about? The case for Ford you've heard. Somebody start us off. Anything to think about there? Somebody have a go. Go on. Faults. Weaknesses. Weaknesses. Now there's a question. What's the other side of the case? Where are Ford's limitations? Where are Ford's limitations? He tends to remain within the confines of his own style. It's a great style developed over decades, but he's only comfortable within the natural parameters of his own very distinctive style. Unlike some directors, he doesn't deliberately break out and experiment beyond his natural style. There seems to be a single authentic voice within his style, which he does not in it, and is very subtle, but he doesn't try and break beyond that and experiment beyond that as well. He's comfortable within his own sphere. It is patriarchal in the end. The kind of male vision is going to be central. Ford's humour is very distinctive, can be a weakness. He tends to play to knockabout drunken antics. Okay, Ford at his weakest. Look at Donovan's Reef. I find it unwatchable. It's just unwatchable. When Howard Hawks had made Rio Bravo, his great Western masterpiece, everything that Hawks ever did in his cinema is in Rio Bravo. He took the same crew and then went off and had a really great time in Africa shooting Atari. And it's a wonderful film. It's loose, freewheeling. It's like, we've done the masterpiece, let's now go and have a great time and just do a freewheeling movie, right? That happened on Liberty Valance. He created the great masterpiece, Liberty Valance. Then he took the crew and the actors, and let's have a great, freewheeling time. Wayne and Lee Marvin again, and it is awful. It is the worst of Ford. Drunken male antics. Now, Ford's got an incredible weakness for that. But Donovan's Reef showed. So that's a good question. Weaknesses. Look at the humour. It's very human. There's beautiful humour in Ford. But look at the way he tends towards drunken male antics. And it's like he can't get enough of it. You know, it goes very deep with it. For some, it may tire quite easily. Victor McClaggen on yet another drunken binge can kind of, you know. Sympathies. He has very wide-ranging sympathies, human sympathies. In the earlier films, he was criticised for his views of the American Indians. And that is why he makes Cheyenne Autumn, to look at his scenes from the Indian point of view. But sometimes they can be faceless killers, but not often. They have their own reasons, authority, and even in the Searchers, where the Plains Indians are terrifying. They are absolutely terrifying in the Searchers. But even in the Searchers, with the racist Ethan Edwards, there is the understanding somewhere of why. Look at the horrors in The Missing, which match explicitly the suggested horrors of the Searchers. The most fearsome of all the Indian tribes are the Apaches. Look how The Missing deals with Mescalero Apaches against the other great Apache grouping. Hard Indian desert, animistic worldview, tribal views. Everything is strength and power. You've got to take power from your opponent. Here is an unfortunate side part of that. You take power from your opponent through pain. Power is not given up. You have to take power to extreme pain, torture, extreme torture of your enemy to take his power. The Comanche in Searchers almost have an Apache lifestyle in the way they use torture and mutilation. It is terrifying. There are hinted horrors in the Searchers, but there are reasons for that extreme, ferocious, torturing aspect. Above all, and it's in The Missing, in the Mescalero Apaches. What's the other grouping of the Apaches in The Missing? What's the other grouping of Apaches? There's Mescalero and the whatever. So there's two groupings, but they both have the same value system. So they can be terrifying. But again and again, it shows their dignity, their value systems, and in Cheyenne Autumn, he constructs a whole film from their point of view. Views on race. He married into white aristocracy, white Southern aristocracy. His family grew up in the South once he'd married his Southern wife. He was surrounded by Southern values. He started work on a film about race issues. I think it's called Pinky. And in fact, he left it. Another director came on. It can be paternalistic. The black hand in Liberty Valance is a boy and so on. Yet, something I said on race and Ford earlier, when he goes for it, he really goes for it. In some of the earlier 30s films, racial stereotypes are used, but you get that in Gone with the Wind. When he finally takes on race seriously, Sergeant Rutledge, it's what I said before. It's unmistakable. If you want a black American male, you can have a liberal Sidney Poitier in the 50s. But 50s Ford doesn't take on a liberal Sidney Poitier, he takes on Woody Strode. And the point I made was, what is unmistakable in Strode is absolute image of a black male strength sexual virility. Now, Strode is a black John Wayne. And he uses Strode in Rutledge for white sexual themes. You know, the rape accusation, the young blonde girl. He's on trial, and it all comes out. Of course, what actually happened at the Apache station is totally different. But all the white sexual stereotypes project onto Rutledge. And then we gradually see the truth. But this key thing, and I mentioned in the lecture, Strode never got over it. All the iconography of the cavalry trilogy, Fort Apache, Rio Grande, she wore the other ribbon, is projected onto Strode. It's a black cavalry unit in the southwest. And Strode becomes a black John Wayne. And as I said, remember, Strode had just come off Kubrick's Spartacus in the key role of Grava, the black gladiator, who gives up his life. He's fed up with killing. He's the one that can defeat Spartacus in the arena. In the fight to the death, he defeats Spartacus. And then he won't kill him, and just walks away, and tries to kill the Roman lords watching. They kill him. They cut him to pieces. But because he let Spartacus live, the great slave uprising against Rome happens. That's how Kubrick used Woody Strode. Then Ford used Woody Strode. Now look at Strode in Liberty Valance. He's a field hand. He's an ex-slave who's been given his freedom. He works for Wayne as his main field hand. Okay? Social role. When the killers start to do their work, and the psychopath who leads the killers, the danger really begins. The whole film flips. And there are two guys, one white, one black, a double. And during the violence, they're absolutely equal. You know, all the social stuff about being a field man disappeared. And they fight as equals, both with Winchester rifles. Look how Ford flips that in Liberty Valance. They're both warriors. They're both warriors. And the relation between them is based on the respect for each other, the warrior. Now, when he goes up against the killers, Wayne only wants one person with him. You know, his field hand. You know, he trusts him. So, you know, and they fight together. So look how he flips that. And so on. There are apparent weaknesses which you then probe and see how much they are weaknesses. Okay. But he sticks to his style. Doesn't experiment beyond his style. Okay. Finally, last point. Ford and genre. We've done this before, so I'll simply remind you that, and this is a good place to finish before we get to the two late films. Remember the lecture in Film Stars, Film Genres on the Western? Ford is the primary architect of one of the key American genres, the Western. Ford basically writes the rules. He inherits the very complex traditions of the silent Western, which he helped shape. But for the sound Western, he transmits the very rich set of traditions of the silent Western, many directors, and constructs the sound Western uniquely. And everybody somehow learns from Ford. But there are different genres. Ford and the war film. Ford and the Western. Ford and the biopic, the exemplary American life, young Mr. Lincoln. Right through, remember, to the Cold War, Wings of Eagles, Strategic Air Command. But above all, of course, the Western. And just remember the lecture. If you take key names in the genre, you're talking John Ford, Howard Hawks, Anthony Mann, Bud Boecher, Sam Peckinpah. Eastwood has gradually constructed himself as an equal to certainly Anthony Mann. He's not quite Peckinpah, but he's certainly the equal of Anthony Mann, I think. For those five, take those five, Ford is primary. So he is the primary architect of the key genre that analyzes American historical experience. Ford's readings of America in the Western have this incredible pivotal role. Hawks goes his own way, very different kind of Protestant, ultra-individualistic Western, stoic endurance of a different kind. But Ford is about being alone. Sorry, Hawks is about being alone. No community. Ford is community. Hawks is about being alone. And all you can trust are your friends. But remember, Hawks made his great Ford Western, Red River. The one historical topic Ford didn't touch. He did the great wagon trains, frontier communities. He never did the giant cattle drive. And so Hawks does the cattle drive, Red River. And it's a Ford Western. It's Hawks going up against Ford. In homage, it's a Ford Western through Hawks' eyes. Cold War psychological Western in Anthony Mann. Boecher is almost French existentialist Westerns. Conflict of the Spanish bullfight using Randolph Scott. And Peckinpah totally transformed the classical Western into its later revisionist phase, particularly using the death of the West myth. Peckinpah again and again closes the classical phase of the Western by taking the narrative myth of the death of the West. Rise the High Country, the death of one of the two key lawmen, like Wyatt Earp. Wild Bunch, the death of the last great outlaw gang. Billy the Kid, Pat Garrett, Billy the Kid, the death of the last mythical outlaw. Death of the West, myths. You've got to remember the single greatest death of the West myth is Ford. The great archetypal death of the West myth is Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And that's where we're going today. Ford's death of the West myth. He closes the classic genre with a myth of ending. It's all over. In Liberty Valance, it's all over. And he constructs American history based on the death of the West. Peckinpah took Liberty Valance and constructed many films as to the death of the West. As, for example, Steve McQueen, Tom Horn, the Apache scout that actually caught Geronimo, the most feared of all the Apache leaders. And when Tom Horn dies, the Queen dies, that's the death of the West. So there are these death of the West myths. But Ford even constructed that in Liberty Valance. Okay. Eastwood, Unforgiven especially, the psychological realities of killing. You know, you can take it all kinds of ways. Robert Altman or Arthur Penn, after 68, the radical political revisionist Western. Penn, Left-Handed Gun, the Freudian Western. Little Big Man, this great episodic, picaresque adventure, rewriting every Western myth. Missouri Breaks American History as Goethe's Faust. The myth of America as a pact with the devil, the Missouri Breaks. Or Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller, The Rise of American Capitalism. You know, we do all kinds of things with the Western. But the great architect is Ford. And remember, Peckinpah inverts Ford. You don't understand Peckinpah without Ford. He takes all of Ford's values. Community, building, optimism, the building of America, the founding values, hope. He takes the whole Ford ideological agenda and he turns it upside down. Energy is violence. Energy is psychotic violence. America is out of control. Its birth is in extreme violence. Personality is psychotic. It's a horrific reading of America, Peckinpah. As I said always, it's a ferocious, one of the most ferocious readings of America. You don't understand Peckinpah until you understood how he's taken Ford and turned Ford upside down. Ford is everywhere. That's why it's taken the harp of into classical Hollywood, taking Ford as one of the most influential ways. So, you know, gender, star systems, Fonda, Wayne, Stewart, whatever, genre, you know, endless ways into a drama. Endless ways. So I just suggested we've got Wells and Hitchcock to come. But that's our first director. That's what it means to take on a director seriously. That's how much is going on in any major drama. Okay, we'll take the 15-minute break and we'll wind it up. The last two great masterpieces, it all comes together. Let's see how. 20 past 2, 25 to, please. So next week there should be, okay, let's begin. Next week there should be Wells readers, 2 volumes. So collect your Wells readers next week. In the corner. I want to move down to make it kind of conversational and friendly. Let's take the last 2 of the later films for Where Ford Went. So take notes on the later 2 films. Let me explain them in some detail to suggest the complexity of the late vision. They're very, very different. Many people just say The Searchers. It's both films together. It's how they fit together that's crucial. So something on each, and hence how they fit together, the approach on the 2. But all of Ford comes together in these 2 films. All of Shakespeare comes together after Lear in Winter's Tale and The Tempest. All of Ford comes together in The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. His life in cinema, all his themes, his understanding of America, they're in those 2 films. So it's great bringing together in 2 films. So let me introduce both of them, and I'll be running long extracts from both, especially The Searchers. So let me start with The Searchers, and then let me talk about, in some ways, even more complex than we've done. Let's start with The Searchers. Often regarded as Ford's most famous film, famous late masterpiece. It's his darkest film. Darkest film. For once, Ford chooses directly tragic themes. So in a sense, it is Ford's tragedy. all the complex themes we've looked at, what a Ford tragedy would be has now almost defined itself. The anarchic, violent male unable to belong to community. The great central themes are inverted, a failure to belong. The anarchic, violent male, in its most extreme form, Ethan Edwards, unable to belong. Fails to belong to community, can't be domesticated, can't be brought within community structure. That's his tragedy. Potentially self-destructive, extremely dangerous. But he cannot belong to community. The definition of Ford tragedy. Ultra-individualism without that community belonging. But there are very complicated, ambiguous relationships between Ethan Edwards and community. Look how complicated, morally ambiguous the relationships are. Moral ambiguity in searches. Nothing is straightforward. Nothing is clear. Deeply morally ambiguous. Like the psychological weapons of anti-man, dark and morally ambiguous. All the darkest aspects of American history are in the Searchers. It's the dark vision of America. If noir takes on the dark vision of America, the Searchers takes on the dark subtext of America. It is one of the most, and this is why it blows Scorsese away in terms of moral ambiguity. Like a Scorsese film, it's an incredibly dark reading of America. It's Ford's Raging Bull. Literally. Ford's Raging Bull. That morally ambiguous. It does something almost completely unprecedented. Tragic, dark, painful themes. And he puts them side by side with the ludicrous. When you think you're dealing with full-blooded, dark tragedies, and you are, the film slips into knockabout farce, absurdist action, the ludicrous. It's like the dark vision is undercut, almost by absurdity. It's an incredibly complex tone, this film. Hence Scorsese's, one of the greatest influences on Scorsese. Ethan Edwards, maybe his most complex protagonist. You need to know the story to understand what he's dealing with.